Elena hadn't returned to her grandmother's house in years. After the funeral, the silence in the countryside felt even heavier than usual. The creaking of old floorboards, the faded scent of lavender that lingered in the air, and the forgotten teacups on the shelf. All whispered memories she wasn't ready to face. But something inside her pulled her back. Maybe it was a need to hold on to a piece of her childhood. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was fate. The house hadn't changed much. The curtains were still lace. The photos on the wall, still frozen in time. But the garden, it was a mess. The once vibrant rose bushes were now wild and untamed, and weeds tangled around the stone path like fingers refusing to let go. One morning, as the sun cast golden light over the forgotten garden, Elena decided to clear a small corner near the roses, her grandmother's favorite. She knelt in the dirt, hands covered in earth, when her fingers hit something hard. It wasn't a root. It wasn't a rock. It was metal. She dug carefully, heart racing. What she uncovered was a small, rusted tin box, wrapped in a piece of cloth, weathered and stained by time. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside, neatly stacked and tied with blue ribbon, were dozens, maybe hundreds, of letters. The edges were yellowed, the ink faded in places, but every envelope was addressed to the same person, her grandmother. Her breath caught. Who had written all of these? With trembling fingers, she opened the first one. The handwriting was elegant, emotional, the words aching with love. My dearest Anna, another year has passed, and still I find myself writing to you. I wonder if these words ever reach you. I wonder if you think of me, as I think of you every single day. Elena's chest tightened. The letter was dated 1982. She opened another. 1987, then 1994, then 2003. Decades of love, sealed away in a box beneath the roses. But what shook Elena to her core wasn't just the words. It was the fact that she had never, ever heard her grandmother speak of this man. Not once. Not in stories, not in photos, not in passing. It was as if he didn't exist. And yet, here he was, in ink, in pain, in longing, speaking directly to her, letter after letter. Elena closed the box slowly, her heart pounding. Who was this man? Why had her grandmother hidden these letters? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, why had she never written back? Elena couldn't sleep that night. The box of letters sat quietly on the table near her bed, almost glowing in the pale moonlight that filtered through the curtains. It felt alive, like it carried a heartbeat of its own. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the handwriting, the way the ink curved gently, the way each word was written with care, with feeling. At sunrise, she didn't even wait for coffee. She pulled out the first bundle, untied the ribbon, and began to read, one by one, letter after letter. Each opened a window into a world she never knew existed. The letters weren't just expressions of love. They were confessions, memories, hopes. Some were short and full of longing. Others spanned pages, describing dreams, fears, and the small details of everyday life that people only share with someone they love deeply. The name at the bottom of every letter was always the same, Samuel. He wrote with the tenderness of a man who had never stopped loving. He spoke of shared laughter, of promises made under the stars, of dances in the rain. He remembered the exact shade of her grandmother's dress on their last summer together. He described the way she smelled of jasmine and books, how her voice used to calm the storms in his heart. But something was always missing in his words. Her voice. Elena noticed it quickly. There were no replies, no evidence of a conversation, only his side of the story. He wrote as if speaking into a void. He always ended with a question or a plea. Do you still remember me? If you read this, just send one word. I'll wait. I've never loved another, Anna. Only you. Decades passed in ink. Letters from the 80s turned into the 90s, then the early 2000s. Yet the tone never changed. His love, though more weary with time, never dulled. What puzzled Elena even more was the timeline. Her grandmother married Elena's grandfather in 1986. But Samuel, he never stopped writing. Even after the marriage, even after her grandmother had a daughter, Elena's mother. He never stopped. Had he known? Or had he kept writing blindly, hoping? Elena's heart felt heavy, like she was intruding on something sacred. But she couldn't stop. She needed to understand. Why would her grandmother keep these letters, hide them, but never destroy them? What did they mean to her? What did she feel when she read them, if she ever read them at all? There was one letter Elena couldn't stop thinking about. It was dated in 1993. The tone was different, urgent, desperate. Anna, I saw you in town today. You didn't see me. Or maybe you pretended not to. You were with a little girl. Is she yours? I stood there, frozen, watching you from across the street. I didn't dare call your name, but I had to write. I had to ask, why did you never answer me? Why did you leave without a word? Elena felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Was he watching her grandmother from afar all those years? Were they still in the same town? Was it possible that all this time the man behind the letters had never truly left? She stared at the last letter in her hand. The date? October 2019. Only 4 years ago. The box never left Elena's side after that day. She carried it like it held not just letters, but fragments of a love too big for time to erase. Every page she unfolded felt like it belonged to someone else's movie, yet somehow it was tied to her family, to her name. She sat by the window that afternoon, the old garden stretching before her. The roses had started to bloom again, touched by sunlight and memory. As the wind carried the scent of earth and distant rain, Elena opened a new letter, one that had been sealed more carefully than the others. It was the only one marked "Return to Sender." Never opened, never read. Her fingers trembled. Inside was a single page. The ink was darker, the handwriting more rushed, almost like Samuel had written it through tears. Anna, I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know if you've chosen to forget me or if something or someone is keeping you from me. But I'll never stop writing, even if you never write back. Because love doesn't end when silence begins. It waits. No address, no date, just pain, raw and echoing off the paper. Elena pressed the letter to her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes, not just for Samuel, but for her grandmother. She thought of the quiet strength Anna had always carried. The way she stared out the window some nights, as if searching for something in the dark. The way she held her teacup gently, as if her hands were remembering someone else's touch. Could she have been mourning a love no one ever knew she lost? Elena rushed to her grandmother's bedroom, now dusty and untouched. She opened drawers, lifted cushions, searched behind books. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, only that something told her there was more. In the bottom drawer of a cedar chest, beneath old scars and lace, she found it, a small notebook, her grandmother's handwriting, faint, slanted. Inside were pages of journal entries, and the first words on the opening page made Elena gasp. I never stopped loving him, but I had to choose silence to protect a truth that wasn't mine to share. Elena flipped through the pages, her eyes racing across inked whispers. Her grandmother had loved Samuel until the end, but for reasons still unclear, she had chosen to bury that part of herself beneath roses, beneath time, beneath silence. Elena sat back, stunned. So many questions swirled inside her. Why did anyone else know about Samuel? Why did her grandmother live with a love so big, yet never speak of it? And what was the truth she had protected so fiercely? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the garden, Elena looked at the final letter in the box. It had no postmark, no envelope, just a folded sheet of paper and a name written at the top. Elena. Her heart dropped. She opened it slowly. If you're reading this, it means you found the letters. And maybe you're ready to understand everything I couldn't say aloud. There's someone you need to meet, because love doesn't vanish. Sometimes it just waits for the right hands to carry it forward. No signature, no instructions, just a quiet message and a door slightly opening. Elena looked out at the garden, the roses now swaying softly in the wind. And for the first time, she wondered, what if the story wasn't over? Elena returned to the lake the next morning. The air was crisp, and a light fog clung to the surface of the water, as if the world hadn't quite woken up. She stood for a moment behind a tree, watching the man on the bench, Samuel, as he flipped slowly through the pages of his notebook. He looked older than she had imagined, but not fragile. There was a stillness to him, a kind of strength that came from carrying something heavy for too long. Elena's hands were shaking as she approached. When she stopped in front of him, he looked up, eyes narrowing ever so slightly, then widening, like something inside him recognized her, without knowing how or why. "Hi," she said softly, voice barely above a whisper. He blinked, lips parting. "You look just like her." Elena's throat tightened. "You knew my grandmother, Anna." He didn't speak for a long time, just looked at her like she was a ghost that had wandered out of memory he thought he'd buried. "I wrote to her," he said finally, "for years." "I know," Elena replied, sitting beside him. "I found your letters. All of them." Silence settled between them. Heavy, sacred. Samuel looked away, toward the lake. She never answered. Elena took a deep breath, pulled the journal from her bag, and placed it in his hands. She wanted to. She just couldn't. His hands trembled as he turned the pages. Each word was a key unlocking doors long shut. When he reached a line that read, "I never stopped loving him," he stopped. His eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. "She kept you," Elena whispered. "She remembered everything. She wrote about you in secret. I think she was protecting something." Samuel let the journal rest in his lap. "I asked her to run away with me, once. Long ago. She said she couldn't. Said someone needed her more than I did." He turned to Elena. "I never knew who that someone was." Now it was Elena's turn to pause. She wasn't sure how much of her family's past she understood anymore, but the truth felt close, just out of reach. She had a daughter. Elena said, "My mother." He nodded slowly. "She never said who the father was." Elena added, voice trembling, "And I always thought it was my grandfather." Samuel stared at her, stunned. "I think," she continued, "she made a choice to keep you both apart. Maybe to protect my mother. Or you. Or herself. I don't know. But she never stopped loving you, Samuel." For the first time, tears spilled from his eyes. Silent. Pure. Decades late. "I never stopped waiting," he said, voice cracking. "I just never thought you'd come." They sat together in silence. Not strangers. Not quite family. But connected by a thread spun long before Elena was even born. And in that quiet moment by the lake, Elena knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. The lake had never felt more still. After their conversation, Elena and Samuel sat in quiet reflection. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind that carried weight, like both of them were mourning a life that could have been, a love that time didn't destroy, only buried. Samuel finally broke the silence, his voice rough but gentle. "Anna, she meant everything to me. But when she left, I thought I'd imagined it all, like maybe I dreamed too big." Elena turned to him. "She didn't leave because she stopped loving you." He nodded slowly, as if the truth was beginning to make peace with his memory. Then Elena asked a question that had been haunting her for days. "Samuel, do you remember the last time you saw her?" He swallowed hard. "It was years after we parted. She was crossing the street, holding a little girl's hand. I stayed on the sidewalk. I couldn't speak. I just watched. That little girl, she looked about 4 or 5. Elena's heart stopped for a second. That matched the timeline. That little girl could have been her mother. Did she ever tell you she was pregnant?" Elena asked carefully. Samuel shook his head. "No, never. I would have done everything to be with her if I knew." Elena's eyes welled up again. "What if she never told you because she was afraid?" Samuel looked at her, stunned. "Are you saying?" Elena nodded slowly. "I don't have proof, but my mother never looked like my grandfather, and my grandmother never spoke of her past. There's a part of me that wonders if you're my real grandfather." The words hit the air like thunder. Samuel sat back, as if the world tilted beneath him. "I never had a family," he whispered. No wife, no children. I waited, hoping someday she would come back. And now you're here. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo she found tucked between the letters. A photo of her grandmother, smiling under the summer sun, holding a baby girl. Samuel took it in his hands like it was made of glass. That's her, he whispered. That's Anna. And the child. Elena nodded. My mother. He stared at it for a long time. Then, in a voice full of wonder and disbelief, he said, I miss her whole life. But maybe I don't have to miss yours. Elena smiled through her tears. Maybe this is why she left me the letters, she said softly. So I could find you. So love wouldn't end with her. Samuel reached out and gently held her hand. And in that moment, full of silence, sorrow, and something like hope, two broken pieces of the past found a way to fit together again. The days that followed felt like dreams wrapped in sunlight. Elena returned to Hollow Creek every morning. She brought coffee, fresh bread from the bakery, and a notebook filled with questions, not just about Samuel's past, but about her own. Each visit peeled back another layer of history. Each conversation was a step closer to healing. Samuel opened up slowly, like a door creaking on old hinges. He told her about his younger years, how he met Anna at a dance hall one autumn evening, how they sat outside under the stars, talking until the world disappeared, how he knew, even then, that she was the one. She wore a blue dress, he said, smiling faintly, with a ribbon in her hair, and when she laughed, I felt like I could breathe for the first time. Elena smiled, imagining it all like a scene from an old film. And then, one afternoon, he said something that caught her off guard. I tried to find her once, he said, watching the lake. Years after that day, I saw her with the child. I went to her town. I asked around, but it was like she vanished. Elena paused. She moved to the coast for a while. My mother always said it was because of a new job, but maybe it was to stay hidden. Samuel nodded slowly. Maybe she was trying to protect me, or your mother, or herself. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elena asked a question that had been circling her thoughts like a quiet storm. Would you take a test? He turned to her. A test? A DNA test, just to be sure. I mean, it won't change what I feel, but part of me wants to know for certain. Samuel looked down at his hands, aged and trembling slightly. Then he nodded. If it helps you find your truth, yes. A week later, they took the test, and the wait began. During that time, they continued their visits. They walked through the town. Samuel showed her the bookstore, the cafe, the old movie theater where he and Anna once hid from the rain, and kissed in the back row. Elena listened with her whole heart, not because she needed proof, but because she could feel it. The way he spoke, the way he looked at her like he already loved her, just for being a piece of Anna, the way his voice trembled every time her name was spoken. He was already family, but the truth was still waiting in a sealed envelope. And when it finally arrived, Elena opened it beside him, her hands shaking. She scanned the page once, then twice, and then, through tears and smiles so wide it hurt, she whispered, "It's you." Samuel didn't speak. He just reached out, held her close, and let his tears fall silently into her hair. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone, and neither was she. The confirmation changed everything. And yet, in many ways, it changed nothing. Elena and Samuel had already begun to feel like family. The DNA test had simply placed a name on a bond they both sensed deep inside. Something rooted not just in blood, but in love, in shared loss, in quiet recognition. They started spending full days together. They cooked meals, read old poetry, went through boxes of memories that Samuel had kept hidden in his attic. Faded photographs, handwritten notes, and one worn-out postcard Anna had sent him decades ago. Elena held it delicately, afraid it might fall apart. On the back, in her grandmother's flowing handwriting, were just 6 words. I never stopped thinking about you. That single sentence echoed louder than any letter. One afternoon, as the sky burned orange with sunset, Elena brought Samuel to her grandmother's house, now hers. They walked to the quiet rooms like guests in a sacred place. Samuel ran his fingers along the kitchen counter, the windowsill, the picture frames. Everywhere he looked, he saw pieces of Anna. In the garden, he stopped suddenly. He stared at a small, half-forgotten rose bush. "She planted this," he whispered, kneeling beside it. "I gave her this rose once. She said she'd keep it blooming forever." Elena stood beside him, heart thudding. Then she kept her promise. Later, they sat on the porch. Elena held a mug of tea, the same blend Samuel used to buy in Hollow Creek. He looked out at the horizon, his voice steady but soft. "I missed her funeral. I didn't even know she was gone. All this time, I thought maybe, someday, she'd walk back to the bookstore door." Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. "I think she left the letters for me so I could bring you here." Samuel nodded slowly. "And maybe," he added, "so we could finish the love story she couldn't." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She wandered through the house, now filled with a different kind of silence. Not heavy like before, but full, charged, as if Anna's spirit lingered, watching with soft eyes and a quiet smile. In the living room, she found one last letter tucked behind a drawer, unopened, addressed to Samuel. Her hands trembled as she took it to him the next morning. He held it for a long time before opening it. Inside, Anna's words spilled out like sunlight through a crack in the door. "If you're reading this, it means time has brought you back to me, even if I'm no longer there. I want you to know I never forgot your face, your voice, your letters. I gave my life to others, but my heart always remained yours. Forgive me for the silence. I just never knew how to say goodbye." Samuel cried openly this time, and Elena cried with him, because sometimes love stories don't end. They pause. And sometimes the greatest goodbyes become a second hello. Winter arrived quietly in Hollow Creek. The town was dressed in soft snow, and inside Anna's letters, the fireplace crackled, casting golden light on the wooden shelves and worn-out novels. Elena stood behind the counter, a cup of tea in hand, watching Samuel as he read a children's story to a group of wide-eyed kids. His voice was strong now, steady. Each word he spoke was a gift. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a few months. One day, she had come to this town with a suitcase full of pain and a heart full of questions. Now, she had a home, a purpose, and a grandfather. After the children left, Samuel joined her near the back of the store. "Do you know what day it is?" he asked. Elena blinked. "Tuesday?" He chuckled. "Yes, but also Anna's birthday." Elena smiled, touched. "I didn't know." Samuel nodded. "She never celebrated it much. But I thought maybe today we should." He handed her a small, wrapped box. Inside was a locket. Oh, delicate. And when she opened it, inside were two tiny photos, Anna on one side and Elena on the other. Elena brought a hand to her mouth, stunned. "I had that made the day I found out you were my granddaughter," he said, voice trembling, "because I never got to carry her close. But now I can carry you." Tears streamed silently down Elena's cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." He smiled. "No, thank you for finding your way here, for giving us both another chapter." Later that evening, when the bookstore was closed and the streets quieted beneath falling snow, Elena sat at her desk, flipping to the last of the letters. There was one envelope she hadn't noticed before. It was small, addressed not to anyone, but simply marked, "For the future." She opened it. Inside, Anna's words flowed like a final embrace. "If love led you here, then let it lead you further. My story ended before I could rewrite it. But yours is just beginning. Don't be afraid to start over. Don't fear the silence. Sometimes, the greatest love stories are the ones we don't expect." Elena closed her eyes, holding the letter to her chest. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and for just a second, she thought she heard a familiar voice, soft, warm, like a memory. "I'm proud of you." She opened her eyes and smiled. In a town she never meant to visit, in a bookstore that once stood still, and in the arms of a man who once waited alone, Elena had found the truth. And in that truth, she found love, not the kind that ends with a goodbye, but the kind that lives forever in every letter, every story, every second chance. The end, or perhaps just the beginning.